So as we know, today we celebrate the fifth Sunday of Lent, and that's why all the statues and images are covered because the last 2 weeks of Lent are called Passiontide. And so the fifth Sunday begins that shift in Lent to the focus is no longer on Christ's time in the desert and things like that. Now it shifts directly to focus on his passion, the suffering he's about to undergo. And so if you come to Mass during the week, starting tomorrow, or even actually on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, the prayers of the Mass change to becoming more centered on Christ's passion. The preface of the Mass, which is said before the Eucharistic prayer, is no longer the preface of Lent. Now it is the preface of the Passion of the Lord, starting tomorrow. So Passion Tide is that time when we're directly preparing for the feasts of Holy Thursday, Good Friday, and Easter. And so the images are covered until that Easter vigil. And so this week we hear in the gospel about Lazarus and Mary and Martha. These are three folks whom the gospel describes as friends of Jesus. They're the only people in the gospel to be given that title. So that's an interesting little note. But also, it says Jesus wept. Now, a lot of people think that he's weeping because his friend died. To an extent, maybe. But I do not believe that is the entire reason he's weeping because his own words prior to that testify that he knew Lazarus was going to die. As we hear the gospel, it says, "The one you love is ill." It says, so when Jesus heard that he was ill, he remained for 2 days in the place where he was. If you're really concerned about your friend dying, it seems like, okay, we're catching the next camel, we're going to Bethany. No, it says he remained for 2 days after he hears this. He intentionally doesn't go there. And then he tells his apostles, even before the fact, Lazarus is dead. If you're going to weep for someone who died, you usually do it when they die. You don't wait till 4 days afterwards. And so there's that. But then Jesus, on top of that, tells his apostles, Lazarus is dead, and I'm glad for you I wasn't there. So it doesn't sound much like he's weeping purely over the fact that he lost a friend. There's something much deeper going on here. In all three of these readings today, they tie together with the theme of resurrection. Ezekiel in the Old Testament talks about God raising the just to life, obviously also the unjust, the evil to eternal punishment. Paul talks about the necessity to die in the flesh, so to speak. As Paul himself used to say, it is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. I've crucified my flesh with Christ, that way Christ may raise me again. And so Paul speaks about the resurrection as the fruit of becoming Christ-like, of following Christ. And in the gospel, we hear about resurrection, Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. But the thing is with this gospel, again, we take into context the historical situation. The leaders of the Jewish people, Sanhedrin, is divided into two groups. There's the Pharisees and the Sadducees. The Pharisees are the ones who get all the flack from everybody because they were nitpickers about a lot of things. And they made a lot of their own laws, that's true. But they at least believed in the resurrection of the dead. The other half of the governing body of the Jewish people does not believe in the resurrection of the dead or that there's an immortal soul, even. The Sadducees. They threw all that out. And this is half of the governing body of the chosen people. So there's a great confusion amongst the people themselves at this point. Half of their leaders are saying, oh, yeah, there's a resurrection. The other half are saying, no, there's not. It's like today, you watch the news. What channel are you going to watch? That'll tell you what they want you to know, and then you have to try to figure out who's telling me all the truth here. The only one that'll ever tell you all the truth is Christ and his church. Whenever people's opinions get involved, then we go astray. And we have the same thing with the Sadducees here. It led a lot of people astray. So there's a familiarity with the idea of the resurrection, but many of the Jewish people don't know if it's a reality or not. And so they're not sure. And so you hear what they say to Jesus when he first comes to the village. The first thing out of Martha's mouth is what? An accusation. If you had been here, he wouldn't have died. An accusation. The first thing he hears when he walks into the village. If you'd been here, if you'd shown up when you heard something was wrong, he would have died. But Martha still has a little bit of faith. But even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you. And then Martha later acknowledges, oh, you are the Christ, the Son of God. Everything sounds great. What's the next thing Christ hears from Mary? We doubt that Jesus actually called Mary. This is Martha using a ruse to get her out of the house because Mary's just enveloped in grief and sorrow and despair. So what's her first words to Jesus? If you'd been here, you wouldn't have died. Another accusation. These are his friends. who are complaining to him that he didn't do something that he could have done. If you had been here, he wouldn't have died. 2 people in a row. The first 2 things he hears are people complaining and blaming him for what happened. After Mary does this, it says Jesus sees her weeping and all the Jews. It says he became perturbed and deeply troubled. Perturbed is a nice way to say he became mad, angry, frustrated. He's frustrated with them. He's disappointed in them. Remember, Mary's the one who sat at his feet, listening to all he was saying, while Martha's cleaning and complaining that Mary's not helping. And now they both blame him for what happened. And then the Jews on top of that, what's the third thing he hears from people? Couldn't the one who had made the blind see at least done something to help this person he says whom he loves? And then it says, so Jesus perturbed again. He weeps in between these 2 things. So I think the main reason why Christ is weeping in a very real way is because of the absolute lack of faith of everybody surrounding him. The apostles themselves. The Jews are trying to stone you. You want to go back there? And Thomas, you got to love Thomas. Well, I guess we might as well go die with him. Nobody believes. Everything they've seen. The first big difficulty that comes up, oh, it's not going to happen. Thomas and the apostles, well, we're going to die because of what you're choosing to do. Martha and Mary, if you'd been here, nothing would have happened. It would have changed. It would have been different. So imagine, he's surrounded by an absolute lack of faith. By all these people who had witnessed all these miracles. If that's not enough to make you break down in tears, I don't know what is. Everything you've done. And on top of that, this is very close to Christ's passion. So he knows what he's about to undergo for these people. And still, they don't believe. And we know that that's one of the reasons why he's troubled and perturbed and angry. Because what does he say to Martha? Martha, just a little while ago, acknowledged, you're the Christ, the Son of God, the Messiah. Jesus says, okay, roll away the stone. Lord, he's been there for 4 days. He's going to smell. But you're the Messiah. You can do everything, right? But he's been there for 4 days. So it's probably not a wise idea to roll away the stone. There's going to be a stench. Martha, who made this profession of faith, still is doubting. There'll be a stench. We probably shouldn't open the tomb. And what is Jesus' response to her? Did I not tell you that if you just believe, you will see the glory of God? Didn't I tell you, if you would only believe, you would see God's glory. If only you would believe. He's confronted by lack of faith everywhere. And yet, he continues to do what he knows needs to be done, in spite of the disbelief and unbelief of the people. And so all 3 of these things tie into the resurrection, the cost of the resurrection, things like that. And so how does this tie into the Stations of the Cross? We've been going over them for the last couple of weeks, and now we're at station number 9. Jesus falls the 3rd time. So this all ties into that in a very real way. We might not realize it, but hopefully we'll show that in a moment here. So the 3rd time Jesus falls. We know that the 2nd fall and the 3rd fall of Jesus occur when he is no longer bearing most of the weight of the physical cross. That all happens after Simon of Cyrene is helping in station number 5. Simon of Cyrene picks up the cross. And so he's carrying the majority of that weight. Christ falls shortly after that, then he falls again. So we know that physically speaking, he's exhausted. I mean, beating, mistreatment, abuse, crowned with thorns, bleeding profusely, hungry, thirsty, it's hot, he's tired, he hasn't had any sleep, he's been dragged here and there for the last day and a half. And on top of that, what he had to go through the scourging and all these things. So physically, he's destroyed. But as we remember from the beginning, this is not the heaviest weight Christ is carrying. The physical side in and of itself is extreme. But the heavier weight Christ is carrying, being that he is an innocent, absolutely innocent person, victim, that he has to come face to face with bearing the entire weight and the gravity of the guilt and the horror of sin and evil. He who has never chosen evil, who has only ever desired God's will, who has never done anything wrong, now has to bear the weight of all of those who have deliberately chosen to do evil, who have chosen to know evil, who have chosen to cooperate with the devil. And so that mental, spiritual, and emotional weight he's carrying is much greater than the physical one. So he falls twice under that. And this 9th station, this 3rd fall of Christ, you can imagine what it would be like in his place. The desire to just give up at that point. We've all been through those situations in our lives, maybe some more than others, I'm sure, where we feel so weighted down and everything by what's going on in our lives and in our messed up world that we just fall down and we have doubts whether or not we want to get back up. Is it really worth it? Does it really matter? Should I really care anymore? We're tempted to despair. The devil loves despair. The things that are going on in our lives, home, work, the parish, they can weigh us down. And we sometimes fall under that load. There's no hiding the fact. I mean, we might like to pretend like we're all super strong, and we are in some things, but we still fall, and sometimes very hard we hit that ground. And again, we're faced with the choice to get back up or just to stay here. There's something comforting about just laying there on the ground and letting it just crush me. Let it finish its job. There's no sense in getting back up. And the devil comes along, just like he would have done when Christ fell. You think he's not tempting him? He tempted him before the passion began, even. So he's not going to give up now. The devil would use the same temptations on him he used on us when we're in those situations. Why bother anymore? Doesn't matter. Nobody cares. See what you get for trying to do the right thing? See what you get for trying to live a virtuous, good, holy life, for following God's will? See where it got you? You're on the ground again. And people are spitting on you. That's what you want? Is that really what you want to live for? Is that really what you want to do? It's not worth it. Give up. Surrender. Let's just let all that garbage go and worry about having a good life here. We can still get out of this situation if you just will stop getting up. And he does the same thing to us when you're down. Just stay down. Why bother? Nobody cares. How's that going to make you a better person? Are people going to love you more? Is your life going to get better? Are you going to have more money? Be better recognized? Be held up by people as an example? No, nobody cares. The world doesn't appreciate sacrifice. The world wants force. The world wants revenge. So don't bother going that way anymore. Stay down. Let this crush you. Surrender yourself to me, and we'll deal with it afterwards. We all go through that, where there's this desire to just give up, to raise the white flag and say, okay, you win. I quit. Why should I keep trying to do the right thing? Why should I keep trying to avoid sin when all it's done is cost me heartache and sorrow and relationships and fun and all these things? Why should I even bother to keep trying to go? Just give up. Surrender to evil. At least then we can get revenge. Look out for number one. And you know that at this ninth station, where Christ falls, he's within sight of Calvary. So all he would have had to do is raise his eyes to see that hill. And while he's hearing these temptations, you might as well just die here. You don't want to be crucified. Think it's bad now, just wait. And for what? This ungrateful rabble around you? What did they do to deserve any of this? Look how they treated you when you were at Lazarus' tomb. It's not worth it. Just lay here and die. And Christ could raise his eyes and see Calvary. And he knew that he had every right, by every single law of nature, to die right there, on the ground where he was. But he also knew that if he died on that ground right there, there's no redemption for us. And there's no empty tomb on Easter Sunday. So he sees Calvary and he gets back up because he knows the sacrifice must be made. The victim must make it to the altar. That he must be willing and able to continue and finish this journey because all of us depend on it. And so when we are tempted also to lay there on the ground and just die to the good, to surrender to the evil, we got to remind ourselves that we're not the first ones who have been in that situation. But there was a man who went through it much worse than I ever could. who promised that he would never leave me alone in that, number one, but who also swore to me that if I just continue that journey, he will give me life. He says, this small Calvary you're going up right now, it results in an empty tomb. It results in a resurrection, but you have to keep going. You have to get up. Come, follow me. He says, I'll take most of your burden. I'll take most of the weight, but you have to get up and follow me. I go first. And when we go through these little Calvaries in our lives, when we're falling on that last step towards the hill and we want to give up, we always have that choice. I can surrender to the devil and to evil. Surrender means to give up. Or I can give myself to God. Say, Lord, Father, into your hands, thy will be done. And so let us keep that in mind, that the resurrection, the cost was a Calvary. And so as it is with every growth in virtue and grace and holiness in our lives, that has to come with the Calvary. But on that Calvary, again, someone is leading me. Someone is walking with me. Someone is bearing most of my weight and ensuring that I can get to the top of the hill. But I have to give myself to him.